Before I begin, if you've ever lived through betrayal like this, please leave a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your support keeps these stories alive. My name's Nadia, and for most of my life, I believed forgiveness was the highest form of strength. I believed letting go of pain made you wiser, softer, more evolved. I believed that until the day I forgave the wrong man and walked straight into the greatest betrayal of my life. I met Adam when I was 26. I was working as a junior architect in Karachi, struggling to prove myself in a firm full of older men who spoke over me in meetings. Adam was a client's consultant, charming, polite, always smiling with a softness that made you feel seen. When he spoke to me, he didn't talk at me, he listened. That was rare and intoxicating. We started talking over tea breaks, then dinners, then long drives along the sea at night, windows down, salt in the air, silence comfortable. Within a year, we were engaged. My mother cried when he proposed. My father shook his hand like he'd secured a priceless deal. Everyone loved him. I loved him too, deeply, recklessly. The cracks started small, a missed call here, a late reply there. Work is stressful, he'd say. You know how it is. I did know, or thought I did. I worked late too. I trusted him. Until the day I didn't. It was a rainy Thursday evening when I came home early with a migraine. Our apartment was quiet, too quiet. Adam's laptop was open on the dining table. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for my painkillers in the drawer beside it when a message popped up on the screen. A woman's name? Unknown. A heart emoji. A sentence that said, "Last night was perfect. When will I see you again?" My hands shook so badly I could barely click the message. There were weeks of conversations, photos, plans, hotel bookings. I remember sitting on the cold tile floor, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. My migraine vanished, replaced by something sharper, something permanent. When Adam came home, soaked from rain and humming, I said nothing at first. I just turned the laptop toward him. He froze. The humming stopped. That night ended with him crying, apologizing, promising it meant nothing. Stress, loneliness, mistake. He said every word a guilty man learns to say. But I was done. I moved out within a week. I threw myself into work. I avoided places we used to go. I deleted pictures. I deleted memories. I told myself heartbreak was a chapter, not a whole book. The divorce finalized quietly. No drama, no public mess, just papers and signatures and silence. Years passed. I turned 32. My career grew. I bought my own small apartment. I learned to enjoy eating alone, traveling alone, celebrating myself. I didn't date much, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to risk that level of pain again. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. Adam. I stared at his name for a long time before answering. "Hi," he said softly. "I know this is unexpected, but I wanted to tell you I'm getting married." I swallowed. "Congratulations." I also wanted to say, "I'm sorry for everything. I've changed. I've grown. I'll always regret how I hurt you." His voice sounded older, quieter, less sure of itself, and in that moment, something inside me unclenched. "I forgave you a long time ago," I said, "and I meant it." He hesitated. "Would you come to the wedding?" I laughed lightly. "You're serious?" "Yes, it would mean a lot, to close things properly, as friends." Friends. The words sat between us like fragile glass. After we hung up, I stared at my ceiling. Did I want to go? Was it maturity or masochism? But I convinced myself this was growth, proof I had healed, proof I was strong. So I agreed. The invitation arrived a week later. Cream paper, gold lettering, a venue in Lahore, a large guest list. I noticed the bride's name, Sarah Rahman. It meant nothing to me then, just another name. Sarah Rahman. If only I had known how familiar that name truly was. The day of the wedding, I wore a simple teal dress, nothing extravagant. I didn't want to look like I was trying to prove anything. I just wanted to show up, smile, leave quietly, and close a chapter. The wedding hall glittered with chandeliers and crystal decor. Music echoed. Guests laughed. Families hugged. Adam spotted me and waved. He looked happy, nervous, dressed in ivory sherwani. For a moment, I felt strangely proud of how calm I was. No shaking hands, no tight chest, just acceptance. "You came," he said warmly, touching my hand briefly. "I wish you the best." He smiled. "Wait till you meet Sarah. She's incredible." He walked away to greet someone. I stayed near the back, sipping water, watching the ceremony begin. Then the bride entered. Red bridal dress, heavy jewelry, a veil covering her face, slow steps toward the stage, applause, camera flashes. I leaned forward slightly, curious now, just polite curiosity. Adam lifted the veil, and the world shifted. Her face was a mirror I had never expected to see. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same small dimple near the left cheek, the same arch of eyebrow. It was like staring at a version of myself from another life. My breath caught, my knees weakened. I gripped the back of a chair. No, it couldn't be. But deep inside, something whispered the truth I had spent years ignoring. I had never known my biological father. My mother raised me alone. The story was always vague. He left before you were born. No name, no pictures, no details. And now, here, in this glittering wedding hall, under golden lights and wedding music, I was staring at a woman who looked like she shared my blood. Adam smiled at his bride, and I realized the man I had forgiven was marrying my half-sister. Before I could process anything further, Sarah's eyes lifted from Adam and locked on mine. Her smile faltered, just for a second, but enough. Enough to tell me she recognized me too. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't an accident. This was a secret, and it was about to explode. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was in a chair near the back row, my fingers curled so tightly around my clutch that my knuckles turned white. The wedding music swelled. Guests clapped. Petals scattered, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart in my ears. Sarah Rahman, my half-sister. I didn't even have proof yet, just instinct, a deep, ancient knowing that came from seeing your own face on a stranger. Sarah looked away first. She turned back to Adam, smiling again, softer now, but there was tension in her shoulders, a stiffness in her spine. She knew. She had recognized me, and that meant she had known exactly who she was marrying. I should have left. Any sensible person would have quietly walked out and never looked back, but I stayed, because after a lifetime of unanswered questions about where I came from, the truth had finally walked into the room wearing a red bridal dress. I stayed through the ceremony, through the vows, through the photos, through the cheers. I watched Adam place a ring on her finger. I watched her say yes. I watched them seal it with a smile, and every second I wondered how deep this betrayal went. After the ceremony, the hall shifted into reception mode. People gathered around tables, waiters passed trays of food, music turned lively. Adam found me again. "Nadia," he said, beaming, "I want you to meet Sarah." My throat tightened, but I stood. Sarah approached slowly, graceful, composed, her bridal jewelry chiming softly with each step. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. It felt like looking into a younger cousin or an alternate version of myself. "This is Nadia," Adam said, "my friend." He hesitated before the word, friend. He didn't say ex-fiancé. He didn't say the woman whose heart he had shattered. Just friend. Sarah extended her hand. "It's nice to meet you," she said. Her voice was gentle, polite, controlled. I took her hand. It was warm, her grip firm. "It's nice to meet you too," I replied. We held each other's gaze for a fraction too long. A silent conversation passed between us. I know, you know, we both know. Adam smiled, oblivious or pretending to be. He said, "I'll go get us drinks," walking away. And suddenly it was just the two of us. Sarah gestured toward a quieter corner near the hallway. "Would you like to sit for a moment?" she asked. I nodded. We sat on a velvet bench away from the crowd. Her bridal dupatta shimmered under the lights. I noticed the slight tremble in her hands as she adjusted her bangles. Neither of us spoke first. Finally, she said, "You look surprised." I let out a breath. "I am." Her eyes softened. "I thought you might come." My stomach twisted. "You knew I was coming?" She nodded slowly. "Adam told me you were his ex. He said you ended things years ago. He said you had forgiven him, that you might attend." I swallowed hard. "And you were okay with that?" She looked away. "I didn't think it would matter. I didn't know you would look like you," I finished. Silence stretched between us. I studied her face. The same high cheekbones, the same faint mole near the jaw, the same shape of lips. I whispered, "Who is your father?" Her eyes widened slightly. "Why do you ask?" "You know why," I said gently. Sarah exhaled, slow and shaky. "My father's name is Imran Rahman." The name hit me like a wave. Imran Rahman, the man whose name my mother had once spoken in a whisper when she thought I was asleep, the man whose letter she kept in a box, the man whose absence shaped my entire childhood. I felt dizzy. "My father," I said, "is also Imran Rahman." Sarah stared at me. The world shrank into that moment. Two women, same father, same blood, meeting for the first time at the wedding of the same man. She covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God," she whispered. "So it's true." "You knew. You knew before today?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I found out 2 years ago. I needed medical history for something, and my mother finally told me. She said her father had another child before he married her, a daughter, but he left. He never spoke of you. She made me promise never to search for you. She said it would only bring pain." I laughed bitterly. "Looks like pain found us anyway." Sarah's eyes filled. "I'm so sorry," she said. "If I had been sure, I would have told you. I would have stopped this." I believed her. Somehow I did. We sat in silence for a while, listening to laughter from the hall, the music of a celebration that now felt surreal. Then I said,
I need to talk to Adam. Sarah nodded. I'll bring him here. When Adam arrived, he was smiling, carefree, holding 2 glasses of juice. What's going on? He asked, sensing the tension. I stood. Adam, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Sarah and I share the same father. He blinked once, twice. What? He asked. Sarah spoke softly. It's true. Adam laughed nervously. No, that's not possible. You're joking. I wish I were, I said. He looked between us, the resemblance, the truth settling in front of him. He sat down slowly. This is insane. No, I said. This is reality. Adam rubbed his face, stunned. I had no idea, none, if I had known. But you didn't, I interrupted, and here we are. He looked at Sarah, then at me, his eyes filled with guilt, confusion, panic. Sarah stood. I need a moment, she said, and walked away, her bridal dress trailing behind her like a fading flame. Adam turned to me. Nadia, I swear on my life I didn't know. I believe you. And I did, but belief didn't erase the situation. He lowered his head. What happens now? I looked toward the door where Sarah had disappeared, toward the life they had just begun. I don't know, I said honestly, but I think all of our lives just changed. And for the first time that night, I allowed a tear to fall. Not just for betrayal, but for fate's cruel sense of timing.
Adam sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the marble floor as if it might give him answers. The lively music outside the hallway sounded muffled now, distant, like a celebration happening in another world. For a moment, none of us spoke. There are silences that feel peaceful. This was not one of them. This was the kind that presses against your chest and steals your breath. I need to find Sarah, Adam said finally, his voice rough. She shouldn't be alone right now. I nodded. Go. He hesitated. Nadia, I never meant to hurt you again. I looked at him, really looked. The man who had once held my hand on moonlit beaches, the man whose betrayal had cracked my heart, the man who had just married my sister without knowing she was my sister. I know, I said quietly, but intentions don't change consequences. He flinched, as if the words struck him physically. Then he left, disappearing into the crowd. I stayed seated, trying to steady my breathing. A waiter passed, offering sweets on a tray. I shook my head. My mouth was too dry to swallow anything. My thoughts spun in circles. Should I leave? Should I talk to Sarah's mother? Should I call my own mother? Should I scream? Should I laugh at how absurd life could be? Before I could decide, Sarah returned. Her eyes were red, but her face was composed again. Adam followed a step behind, looking lost. Sarah sat beside me. Adam remained standing. We need to talk, Sarah said. Adam nodded. Yes, please. Tell me everything. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare. Sarah took a slow breath. My mother told me my father was Imran Rahman, a businessman. She said he loved her, but he had a past, another relationship before her, a child. He never told her much, only that he left them. I never questioned it, not until I needed medical records. When I confronted her, she admitted it, that I had a half-sister somewhere. Adam looked at me. And that's you. I nodded. My mother never spoke of him much, only that he left when she told him she was pregnant. I grew up believing he didn't want us, that we were a mistake. Sarah's eyes softened. I'm sorry, truly. Adam sank onto a chair. So your father abandoned you both, he said, shaking his head. And somehow fate decided I would love you, then love her. He let out a hollow laugh. That's cruel. I smiled sadly. Yes, it is. Sarah folded her hands together. We can't change what's happened, but we have to decide what happens now. Adam looked panicked. Are you saying we should annul the marriage? Sarah stared at him. I don't know. The words hung in the air. Annul the marriage. Undo what had been celebrated just moments ago. Turn joy into scandal. Break families. Break hearts. Adam turned to me. Nadia, say something, please. I swallowed. My voice felt small. This isn't my decision. But you're part of this, he insisted. I hurt you. I betrayed you once, and now this. If you're in pain because of us, stop it, I said gently. This isn't about me being your ex. This is about two sisters who didn't know each other existing in the same world. This is about secrets our parents kept. This is bigger than our past. Sarah nodded. She's right. Adam covered his face with his hands. I just got married, and now I find out my wife is the sister of the woman I once planned to marry. How do I live with that? I wanted to say, welcome to my world, but I didn't. Instead, I said, you didn't know. None of us knew. That matters. Sarah reached for my hand, hesitated, then gently held it. Our fingers fit together like they'd known each other forever. I don't hate you, she said. If anything, I feel like I found something I never knew I needed. Her words touched a place in me I didn't know was empty. A sister. All my life I had wondered what it felt like to have someone who shared my blood. Now here she was, not in a warm family reunion, but in a wedding dress, married to my ex. Life truly had a twisted sense of humor. Adam stood up abruptly. I need air, he muttered, and walked away again. Sarah and I sat in silence, hand in hand. I should probably go, I said, finally. This is your day. I don't want to be the shadow over it. Sarah shook her head. You're not a shadow. You're the truth. Her words touched my throat. We stood. She walked me towards the exit. Guests smiled at her, congratulating her. No one knew the storm behind her eyes. At the door, she said, Will you come see me tomorrow? We need to talk more. About our father. About everything. I nodded. Yes. We hugged. It felt natural and heartbreaking. When I stepped outside, the night air hit my face. Cool, real, grounding. I walked toward my car, heels clicking on the pavement, the sounds of the wedding fading behind me. I sat in the driver's seat but didn't start the engine. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring. Nadia. Mom, I said. I met my sister tonight. Silence. Then a whisper. Oh, God. I closed my eyes. Somewhere in Lahore, fireworks burst in the sky celebrating a marriage, and inside my chest, another story was igniting, one that would force every lie into the light. I drove home slowly, knowing that tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same again. I barely slept that night. My mind replayed every moment from the wedding on a relentless loop. Adam's stunned face, Sarah's trembling hands, the way our eyes recognized each other before words ever did. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, I realized the pain I felt wasn't only about betrayal anymore. It was about identity, about the pieces of myself that had been missing my entire life. By morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Please come today, noon, my apartment. I'll send the address." I didn't hesitate. I showered, dressed in simple clothes, and drove through the chaotic Karachi traffic, feeling like I was driving toward a version of myself I'd never met. Her apartment was modest, warm, decorated with small plants and soft cushions. Nothing extravagant, nothing bridal. When she opened the door, she wasn't wearing makeup, no jewelry, just a cotton shirt and loose trousers. She looked younger, vulnerable, human. "Thank you for coming," she said. We sat on her couch with cups of tea between us. For a while, we just talked about small things, her job as a school teacher, my work as an architect, the cities we lived in, our favorite foods, how we both loved rainy weather, how we both hated loud parties, how we both slept with a small light on. Each similarity felt like a thread tying us together. Then Sarah brought out a small folder. "These are copies," she said. "My mother's medical records, my birth certificate, and this." She slid a photograph across the table. A man in his 40s, kind eyes, a familiar nose, familiar jaw. Imran Rahman. I stared at the picture. My father, the man I had imagined in countless ways but had never seen. Sarah said softly, "He died 5 years ago." My breath hitched. "He's gone?" She nodded. "Heart attack. Sudden. I never got to ask him about you, about why he left." I swallowed hard. Grief rose inside me for a man I never knew, a grief that felt strangely valid and strange at the same time. Sarah touched my hand. "I'm sorry you never got answers." I smiled sadly. "I think I got the biggest answer last night." We laughed lightly at the absurdity of it, two sisters discovering each other through the same man's love story, tragedy and comedy intertwined. Then Sarah's expression grew serious. "There's something else," she said. "Adam doesn't know what to do. He didn't sleep. He keeps asking if we should annul the marriage." I leaned back. "What do you want?" She hesitated. "I love him. I really do. But I also feel guilty, as if I've stolen something that once was yours." I shook my head. "You didn't steal anything. What Adam and I had is in the past, long buried. You didn't take him from me." Her eyes glistened. "But the world will judge. People will say I married my sister's ex, that I broke girl code, that I'm heartless." I sighed. "People always talk, no matter what we do." She looked carefully at me. "If I stay married to him, can you live with that?" The question sat heavy between us. I thought about Adam, of the betrayal, of the years of healing, of forgiveness, and I realized something important. I already forgave him. Not for him, for me. Your marriage to him doesn't change my past, and it won't control my future. Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly. "So you're okay with it?" "I didn't say it won't be strange," I said, smiling softly. "But yes, I can live with it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Thank you." I wiped her tears. "We're sisters, maybe not by choice, but by truth, and I don't want to lose you because of something our parents hid." She laughed through tears. "You're surprisingly calm about this." I chuckled. "Trust me, I've used up my lifetime supply of panic already." We sat together, sipping tea, the weight of our shared blood settling into something softer, something hopeful.
Later that evening, Adam came over. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red, his beard untrimmed. He stood in the doorway, unsure of his place in this new reality. Sarah motioned him in. He sat opposite us, hands clasped tightly. "I owe both of you an apology," he said, "for inviting you to the wedding without considering how painful it might be, for putting you in this position without meaning to." I nodded. "I believe you didn't know, and I accept your apology." He exhaled in relief. He turned to Sarah. "And I'm sorry for dragging you into this. If you want to end this marriage before it truly begins, I'll understand." Sarah reached for his hand. "I don't want to end it. I just want honesty. No more secrets, ever." He nodded firmly. "Agreed." I watched them, two people trying to hold on to love in a situation that would break many. It was messy, complicated, human. Adam looked at me again. "Nadia, I hope someday you'll find someone who deserves you fully." I smiled. "Maybe, maybe not, but I'll be okay either way." He looked surprised by my peace, but it was real. Because in losing a romantic future that was never meant to be, I had gained something unexpected. A sister. As I left Sarah's apartment that night, the sky was painted orange and purple. The air smelled of rain. I walked to my car slowly, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had forgiven my ex. I had found my sister. I had reclaimed a missing part of myself. And though the story began with betrayal, it was ending with truth. But life wasn't done with us yet. Not by a long shot.
Over the next few weeks, Sarah and I settled into something that felt almost unreal. Daily messages, long phone calls, shared photos of our childhoods. She sent me a picture of herself at 5 years old, missing her front teeth, standing beside our father. I stared at that photo for a long time, not because I mourned him anymore, but because I finally understood the shape of my own face. It turns out, blood recognizes blood, even when lies try to bury it. Adam and Sarah moved into a new apartment together in Lahore. They decided not to post wedding pictures online, not out of shame, but out of a quiet understanding that their marriage had begun under complicated skies. They needed time to breathe before the world weighed in. As for me, I threw myself back into my work. A new project landed on my desk, designing a women's community center. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, a space for healing, for rebuilding, for new beginnings. I worked late nights, sketching windows that let in soft light, open courtyards, gardens. I didn't just design walls, I designed hope. One afternoon, as I reviewed blueprints in my office, my phone buzzed. "Mom." I hesitated before answering. Since the night of the wedding, we had barely spoken. She had cried, apologized, repeated that she never wanted me to feel abandoned, that she had kept the truth to protect me. Parents always say that. Protect, shield, spare. But sometimes protection becomes its own form of harm. "Hi, Mom," I said. "Nadia," she whispered. "Can we talk?" We met at a small cafe the next day. She looked older than I remembered, lines on her face I hadn't noticed before, hands that shook slightly when she held her teacup. "I should have told you," she said. "Every day of my life I wanted to, but I was afraid you'd hate me, afraid you'd go looking for him, afraid you'd be hurt again." I listened quietly. "When I heard your voice the other night, saying you met your sister, I realized the truth always finds its way, no matter how deeply we bury it." I reached across the table and held her hand. "I don't hate you," I said, "but we need to stop pretending silence is love.
Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You've become stronger than I ever was." In that moment, something healed between us too. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Weeks turned into months. Sarah and I started meeting regularly. We explored markets together, cooked dinner, watched old movies. We laughed about how we both folded towels the same way, how we both preferred chai with extra cardamom, how we both bit our nails when nervous. We didn't need DNA tests. Our shared habits were proof enough. One evening, while we sat on her balcony watching the city lights flicker, she said, "Do you ever miss him?" I knew she meant Adam. I thought about it, about the warmth of his hand, the sound of his laugh, the pain of his betrayal. "No," I said finally. "I miss who I was before I knew heartbreak, but not him." Sarah nodded. "I love him, but I see him differently now, more carefully, more honestly." That was the gift of the chaos, honesty, no illusions, no fantasy. Life settled into a new rhythm, until one rainy morning I received a letter. No return address, just my name in neat handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "I am writing this because secrets have already destroyed enough. I am your mother's sister. I am Sarah's mother. I am the woman Imran Rahman left his first love for. I am sorry. I was young. I was selfish. I didn't ask questions I should have. I didn't tell my daughter about you soon enough. I thought I could control fate. I was wrong. Please forgive me." There was a phone number at the bottom. I stared at the letter for a long time. My aunt, the other woman in the story, the one whose existence changed everything. I didn't call immediately. I wasn't ready. But I kept the letter, because sometimes healing is slow. Sometimes forgiveness needs time to grow. That night, Sarah called me. "Guess what?" she said excitedly. "I'm pregnant." The word filled the silence between us. Pregnant. A new life. A child born from a union that began with secrets but was now built on truth. "A baby," I whispered. "You're going to be a mother." "Yes," she laughed, "and you're going to be an aunt." I smiled, warmth spreading through my chest. An aunt. A sister. A daughter who finally knew where she came from. Later, after we hung up, I stood by my window watching the rain. The city glowed beneath clouds. Cars passed. Lives moved forward. The world didn't end because of betrayal. It just reshaped itself. I thought back to the girl who had sat on the cold floor years ago, staring at a laptop screen that revealed Adam's affair. The girl who thought her life was over. The woman who forced herself to forgive. The person who walked into a wedding hall expecting closure and walked out with a sister. Pain had rewritten my story, but it had also expanded it. I didn't get the fairy tale romance. I got something far stranger, far more real. I got truth, and in truth, I found peace. Because forgiveness isn't about excusing the past. It's about freeing the future. And mine was finally free. Sarah's pregnancy became the new heartbeat of our lives. Every message from her carried excitement, fear, hope, and 1,000 tiny questions. What doctor should she see? What vitamins were best? Would I come with her for her first ultrasound? I said yes to everything, not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted to be there. For her, for the child, for the sisterhood fate had stitched together from broken threads. The first time I saw the ultrasound image, a tiny flickering pulse on a black and white screen, something cracked open inside me.
life continuing, life insisting on moving forward, a reminder that no matter how tangled the past, the future always finds a way to breathe. Adam stood beside Sarah during that appointment, holding her hand tightly. When he noticed me in the corner of the room, he gave a small nod, respectful, grateful. We didn't speak much anymore. We didn't need to. Our history was acknowledged, not denied. That was enough. Outside the clinic, Sarah slipped her arm through mine. "You know," she said, "this baby will never grow up wondering who they are. We'll make sure of that." I smiled. Yes, no secrets. And as we said it, we both understood how heavy those words were. They were a promise to break a generational cycle, to raise a child in truth, not silence. But life has a way of testing new promises. 2 months into Sarah's pregnancy, Adam lost his job. A sudden restructuring, budget cuts, no warning, no severance beyond a few weeks. He came to Sarah's apartment that evening with a hollow look in his eyes, the same look I had seen years ago the night I discovered his betrayal. "I failed," he said quietly. Sarah held his face in her hands. "You didn't fail. You got unlucky. We'll figure it out." But uncertainty entered their home like an uninvited guest. Bills, rent, baby expenses, whispers late at night. Adam's confidence thinned, Sarah's worry grew, and I found myself stepping in, quietly, paying for groceries, slipping envelopes of cash into Sarah's drawer, pretending it was nothing. One evening, Sarah confronted me. "I know you're helping," she said, "and I'm grateful, but I don't want to depend on you." I squeezed her hand. "You're not depending. You're letting family help." She smiled softly. I like hearing that word, family. For so many years, I had thought of myself as a single branch on a tree with no roots. Now the roots were forming, deep, strong, unavoidable. Meanwhile, my own life kept evolving. The Women's Community Center project moved from design to construction. The site visits became my escape. Hard hats, dust, concrete, noise. A place where my personal chaos didn't matter, where walls rose because I told them to, where something solid was being built under my watch. One afternoon at the construction site, I met Zane. He was an electrical engineer, quiet, focused, slightly awkward. He asked questions instead of giving instructions. He respected my role. Over weeks of shared meetings and chai breaks, we began talking about books, travel, city life, dreams. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. One evening, as we stood overlooking the half-built center under orange sunset light, he said, "You carry yourself like someone who's been through storms." I laughed lightly. "I have." He nodded. "I'd like to know that story someday, if you'll let me." For the first time in years, I didn't feel my chest tighten at the thought of letting someone in. I just smiled. Maybe someday. Back in Lahore, Sarah's belly grew rounder. Baby clothes filled her drawers, tiny socks, soft blankets. The baby's room slowly came together. Adam found freelance work. Not much, but enough to breathe again, enough to smile more, enough to hope. And then one night, my phone rang at 3 a.m. Sarah. Her voice shook. "Nadia, my water broke." I was on the next bus to Lahore before sunrise. I reached the hospital as Sarah was being wheeled into the delivery room. Adam looked terrified, pale, lost. "She keeps asking for you," he said. I squeezed his shoulder. "I'm here." Hours passed, long, slow, heavy with prayers and pacing and half-drunk cups of tea. Then finally, a nurse emerged. "Congratulations," she said. "It's a girl." A girl. Sarah had a daughter. When they placed the baby in Sarah's arms, she cried softly, not from pain, from love so raw it filled the room.
Adam kissed both their foreheads, and I stood at the foot of the bed, watching a new chapter begin. Sarah looked at me. "Meet your niece." I stepped closer. The baby was tiny, wrinkled, warm, her fingers curled instinctively around mine. In that moment, everything made sense. Not the betrayal, not the secrets, not the pain, but the outcome, the strange, unpredictable path that had led to this tiny human holding my finger like she was my anchor. "What's her name?" I asked. Sarah smiled. "Isla. It means moonlight." I whispered, "Welcome to the world, Isla." As I left the hospital that night, I sat on the steps outside, breathing in the cool air. I felt tired, but peaceful. I thought back to the hook that had started this strange journey, forgiving an ex, walking into a wedding, discovering a sister, uncovering a buried father, facing generations of silence, breaking them one by one. I used to think forgiveness was about letting someone else off the hook. Now I knew better. Forgiveness was about untying yourself from the past so your hands were free to hold the future. And as I looked up at the night sky, a pale moon glowing above, I realized something else. Some stories don't begin with love. Some begin with loss, but they still find their way home.
Ayla came into our lives like a soft sunrise, quiet at first, gentle, but steadily brightening everything around her. Sarah would send me videos of her tiny yawns, her first smile, the way she wrapped her little fingers around Sarah's thumb. Every clip made my heart ache in a way that was sweet, not painful. I visited Lahore every other weekend. I became the aunt who brought baby blankets, silly toys, and stories, the aunt who learned how to hold a newborn without fear, the aunt who whispered promises into tiny ears about always telling the truth, no matter how hard it was. One afternoon, while rocking Ayla to sleep, I realized something that startled me. I was happy. Not pretending, not forcing peace, truly, deeply happy. And that was when life decided to test me again. It was Sarah's mother who called first. "I need to see you," she said. "Please." I had never met her in person, the woman who had unknowingly been my aunt all along, the woman's letter I had kept folded in my drawer like a fragile truth waiting to be opened. We met at a quiet tea house. She arrived wearing a plain shawl, her hair streaked with gray. She looked nervous, just like my mother had that day in the cafe. "I'm Farah," she said softly, "Sarah's mother." I nodded. "I know." She swallowed. "I never thought I would meet you, not like this." We sat. Tea poured. Silence poured with it. Finally, she said, "I loved Imran once. I thought he loved me too. When I found out about you, I felt threatened. I thought if I allowed you into our lives, he would leave us. So I asked him never to speak of you again. I was wrong. I see that now." Her confession sat between us like a fragile glass bowl. I took a slow breath. "My mother raised me alone. She never blamed you or him, but I grew up feeling unchosen." Farah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I can't change what I did, but I don't want to lose Sarah or Ayla. And if you are part of their life, then I want to make peace with you, too." I looked at her, really looked, not as an enemy, not as the other woman, but as another mother who had made choices out of fear. We can't rewrite the past, but we can stop it from poisoning the future.
She reached across the table, hesitant. I placed my hand in hers, and in that small gesture, another knot in our tangled history loosened. A week later, our mothers met. My mother, her mother, two women bound by the same man's mistakes. Two women who had lived decades in parallel pain, sitting together in Sarah's living room, holding cups of tea, looking at Ayla sleeping peacefully in her crib. They cried, they apologized, they forgave each other in fragments, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. And for the first time, the family tree that had grown from secrecy now stood in daylight. No more shadows, no more hidden branches. Meanwhile, my own life continued to unfold. Zane asked me to dinner one evening, not a work dinner, just dinner. I said yes. We talked for hours about travel dreams, about childhood memories, about loss. I told him pieces of my story, not all at once, but enough. He listened, not with pity, but with respect. When he walked me to my car, he said, "You don't need to rush anything, but I'd like to be part of your story, if you'll let me." I smiled. "One page at a time," I said, and he smiled back. "One page at a time." Months passed. The Women's Center opened, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, smiling faces, young girls stepping into a space built for their growth. As I stood there giving a short speech, I realized I had designed more than a building. I had built myself anew, too. Sarah returned to teaching. Adam found stable work again. Their marriage settled into something real, not fairy tale perfect, but honest, transparent, stronger because of the fire it had survived. One evening, all of us gathered in Sarah's home. My mother, Farah, Adam, Sarah, Ayla, me, even Zane joined. We ate together, laughed together, passed Ayla from lap to lap, watched her babble happily at the faces around her. At one point, Sarah leaned toward me and whispered, "Can you believe this started at a wedding hall?" I chuckled. Sometimes life reveals truth in the loudest places. Later that night, as I drove home, I thought about the title of my life story. I forgave my ex and found his bride was my half-sister. It sounded like tragedy, like scandal, like the beginning of revenge. But it became something else. A story about forgiveness that didn't weaken me. A story about truth that didn't destroy me. A story about family born not from tradition, but from choice. I used to think my life was defined by what was taken from me. Now I knew it was defined by what I built from the ruins. And as I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, a picture of Ayla sleeping, and 3 words: "My sister, my strength." I smiled, tears forming in my eyes, because sometimes the most broken beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. And my story, once filled with betrayal, had become a legacy of honesty, love, and resilience. A story I would tell again and again, not with bitterness, but with pride.
Time has a way of turning even the sharpest pain into something softer. Not forgotten, just transformed. By the time Ayla turned 2, the chaos that once threatened to tear us apart had become a strange family legend we never spoke of in front of her. Not out of shame, but because we wanted her childhood to begin in joy, not complexity. She called Sarah Mama, Adam Abu, my mother Nani, Farah Dadi, and me Khalo Nadia, Aunt Nadia. Every time she said it, my heart swelled, not because I needed a title, but because I had found a place I never knew I was missing. Sarah and I grew closer with each passing season. We celebrated birthdays, festivals, school achievements. We shared recipes and secrets and worries. Sometimes we sat quietly together, just watching Ayla play, both of us silently amazed at how our lives had tangled and untangled. One afternoon, Sarah said, "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" I smiled. "Sometimes, but I don't miss the life I imagined. I like the one I lived." She nodded. "Me too." Adam and I settled into an easy distance, respectful, cordial. The tension dissolved over time. We were no longer ex-lovers in an awkward story. We were family through circumstance, bound by love for the same child, connected through shared history. It was strange, but peaceful. Zane and I continued seeing each other, slowly, gently, without rush. He met Ayla, he met Sarah. He never once acted intimidated by my unconventional family situation. Instead, he said something once that stayed with me. Families aren't broken by truth, they're broken by lies. And I realized I had finally found a man who valued honesty as much as I did. But not all chapters close neatly. One evening, my mother called me in tears. Farah had been diagnosed with cancer, stage 3. The word echoed in my mind as I drove to Lahore again, heart heavy. Life, just when you start believing you've outrun Cain, reminds you it still writes part of the script. Farah was thin when I saw her voice weak but her eyes sharp. Sarah sat beside her bed holding her hand. Adam stood at the window watching the sky. When Farah saw me, she smiled faintly. "You came." I sat beside her. "Of course." Over the next months, we watched her fade. Treatments, hospital visits, hope rising and falling, but through it all, something extraordinary happened. Our mothers became friends. My mother sat by Farah's bed, feeding her soup, brushing her hair, praying beside her. Two women who had once stood on opposite sides of a secret, now holding each other up through pain. One quiet afternoon, Farah asked me to lean closer. "I want you to promise me something," she whispered. "What?" "Don't let Ayla grow up with lies. Tell her everything when she's old enough. Let her know her story. Let her be free." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I promise." Farah passed away 3 weeks later. At her funeral, Sarah clung to me like a child. Adam carried Ayla. My mother stood beside us, grief softening her face. As we lowered Farah into the earth, I thought about how the past had come full circle, a story that began with secrets, now ending with truth spoken aloud. After Farah's death, Sarah struggled. Grief hollowed her out. Some nights she called me just to breathe on the phone, words unnecessary. I learned then that being family isn't about shared DNA alone. It's about staying when things hurt, about carrying weight together. Slowly, Sarah found her footing again. Ayla's laughter helped. Adam's steady presence helped. My weekly visits helped. And one spring afternoon, as Ayla ran through a field chasing butterflies, Sarah whispered to me, "I think Mama would be proud of us." I nodded. "I think so too." Zane proposed a month later. No grand spectacle, just a quiet rooftop dinner, fairy lights, and a small ring. "I know your life is unique," he said, smiling nervously, "but I want to be part of it, fully, if you'll have me." I thought about all the promises I had made myself after Adam, that I'd never risk heartbreak again, that I'd never trust blindly.
But love isn't blind. It's a choice. And I chose. Yes, I said. Sarah screamed when I told her. Ayla clapped, though she didn't understand. Adam smiled and shook Zane's hand. My mother cried. Happy tears this time. At my wedding, Sarah stood beside me. My sister, my mirror, my unexpected gift from fate's strange design. As I walked down the aisle, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a glass panel, and for a moment I saw the younger Nadia, the one who sat on a floor staring at betrayal, the one who walked into a wedding hall and had her life explode. I wanted to whisper to her, "Hold on, it gets better. So much better." And when Zane took my hand, warm and steady, I knew something deep in my bones. I had not just survived my story, I had rewritten it. Not as a victim of betrayal, but as the author of my own life.
My wedding to Zane was smaller than Sarah's had been. No chandeliers, no grand hall, just a garden, fairy lights, white flowers, and the people who had walked every step of my journey with me. It was peaceful, intentional, free of secrets. As I stood under the open sky, listening to the officiant speak about partnership and truth, I felt something settle inside me, a quiet certainty that I had finally stepped out of the shadow of my past. Sarah stood beside me as my witness. Isla, in a tiny dress, dropped flower petals along the aisle, occasionally stopping to wave at guests. Everyone laughed. No one minded. It was perfect in its imperfection. Adam attended too, not as a ghost from my past, but as part of my present family circle. He shook Zane's hand, smiled politely, and kept a respectful distance. There was no tension, only acceptance. After the ceremony, Sarah hugged me tightly. "My sister," she whispered. "Look at us." I smiled. Look at us. Two women, once linked by secrecy and confusion, now bound by choice, love, and honesty. Zane fit naturally into the family. He helped Adam fix things around the house. He let Isla paint his nails. He listened when Sarah talked about her mother. He didn't try to control the narrative of our lives. He simply joined it. Months passed. Zane and I settled into married life. Quiet mornings, shared chores, inside jokes, soft comfort. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just real. And in that reality, I found the greatest gift of all, stability without fear. One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the city lights, Zane said, "Have you ever thought about writing your story down?" I laughed. Who would want to hear something so strange? He smiled. "You'd be surprised. Stories like yours remind people that life can break you and still give you something beautiful." I thought about it, about the girl who forgave her ex, about the woman who discovered a sister, about the family born from shattered truths, about the child who would grow up knowing honesty, not silence. Maybe he was right. Maybe our pain had purpose. The next week, Sarah and I took Isla to the park. She ran ahead, fearless, free, her laughter echoing across the grass. Sarah watched her and said, "Sometimes I wonder if our Father is somewhere watching all this." I considered the question. The man who had left us both, who had shaped our lives through absence more than presence. "I don't know," I said. But if he is, I hope he sees that his daughters turned his mistakes into something better." Sarah smiled. "We did that." "Yes," I said, "we did." Later that night, I opened a blank notebook. I wrote the first sentence. "I finally forgave the man who shattered my heart, only to discover his bride was my half-sister." The words flowed, page after page, memory after memory, not as revenge, not as tragedy, but as testimony. Because stories heal, and some stories deserve to be told. Years from now, when Isla is old enough to ask questions, we'll tell her everything about love, about mistakes, about truth, about forgiveness, about how her existence brought light into places once dark. We won't lie, we won't hide. We'll trust her with the truth the same way we once wished we had been trusted. And she will grow up knowing that even when life writes shocking chapters, you always have the power to choose the ending. As I closed my notebook that night, Zane kissed my forehead. "Proud of you," he said. "I'm proud of me too, because I forgave my ex. I found his bride was my half-sister, and instead of letting it destroy me, I let it transform me." Ayla was 7 when she finally asked the question. Children always sense what adults think they've hidden well. They notice glances, pauses, shifts in tone. She had grown up surrounded by love. Sarah's gentle patience, Adam's playful energy, my steady presence, Zane's warmth, my mother's soft affection. Yet somewhere inside her, curiosity bloomed like a flower reaching for sunlight. We were sitting on Sarah's couch, Ayla curled beside me with a picture book on her lap. She turned a page, then looked up suddenly. "Hello, Nadia," she said. "Why do you and Mama look the same?" Sarah, who was pouring tea, froze. Adam paused mid-sentence. Zane glanced at me gently. The moment had arrived. I smiled at Ayla. "That's a good question." Sarah came and sat beside us, brushing Ayla's hair back from her forehead. "What do you think?" Sarah asked softly. Ayla shrugged. "Maybe you're twins," she said seriously. I chuckled. "Not twins, but close." Sarah took a slow breath. "Ayla, Khalo Nadia is my sister, my real sister. We share the same father." Ayla's eyes widened. "Like blood sister?" "Yes, just like you and a brother or a sister you might have someday." She tilted her head. "But Abu used to love Khalo Nadia before Mama." Adam winced slightly. Sarah gave him a warning look. Children's questions have no filters. They go straight to the heart. Sarah nodded. "Yes, he did, a long time ago, before Mama met him." Ayla thought about this for a moment, then said, "So Mama married Khalo Nadia's old love?" I burst into laughter. Sarah covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Even Adam smiled, despite himself. "Yes," I said, "that's exactly what happened." Ayla looked deeply confused. "Isn't that weird?" "It is," Sarah said honestly. "Very weird." Ayla considered this, then shrugged. "But you all love each other now, so it's okay." And just like that, she accepted what had once nearly broken us. Children have a way of seeing truth without judgment. They don't carry the weight of social expectations or shame. They see love. They see presence. They see who stays. Later that night, after Ayla was asleep, Sarah and I sat on the balcony, teacups warm in our hands. "I was afraid of this day," Sarah admitted, "afraid she'd feel confused or ashamed." I shook my head. "She's growing up with honesty. She'll be stronger for it." Sarah smiled. "You're right." Inside, Adam tucked Ayla into bed. Zane washed dishes. My mother dozed in the guest room. Our unconventional family moved through the house like a quiet symphony. Different instruments, one song. A few months later, Sarah called me again, her voice trembling with excitement. "I'm pregnant." Again. This time there was no fear, no chaos, no storms, only joy. Ayla would have a sibling, a brother or sister, a new branch on our strange but sturdy family tree. At the baby shower, my mother and Sarah's mother's empty chair sat side by side. A small candle burned between them, a symbol of women who once stood divided but whose daughters chose unity instead. Zane leaned toward me during the celebration and whispered, "Our family is proof that love isn't about perfect beginnings, it's about brave endings." I squeezed his hand. Yes. As the years rolled on, our story became less about the shock that started it and more about the life that grew from it. People who heard pieces of it would gasp, shake their heads, whisper, "That sounds like a drama series." And I'd smile, knowing the real story was quieter, softer, more profound. Not revenge, not bitterness, but evolution. Sometimes I think back to that wedding hall, the moment Adam lifted Sarah's veil, the instant my world tilted. If I could speak to that version of myself, I would tell her, "Don't run, don't scream, don't break. Sit down, breathe, because something extraordinary is about to begin." And as I watch Ayla now, helping her mother prepare for her new sibling, I know one thing for sure. We didn't just survive the truth, we built a legacy from it. A legacy of forgiveness, of courage, of radical honesty. And it all began the day I forgave my ex and found his bride was my half-sister. By the time Sarah's second child was born, our story had stopped feeling like a shocking twist of fate and started feeling like a quiet, living truth, something woven into daily routines, school runs, dinner tables, family group chats, soft laughter, shared burdens, ordinary life built on an extraordinary beginning. The baby was a boy. They named him Ryan. When Sarah placed him in my arms, I saw Isla's eyes in his tiny face. I saw our father's jaw. I saw the continuation of a story that once nearly shattered us. Ryan slept peacefully against my chest, warm and trusting, and I felt something I never expected when all this began. Gratitude. Not for the betrayal, not for the pain, but for the path it forced me to walk. Because without it, I would never have known my sister, never held my niece and nephew, never built the family I once thought I didn't deserve. Years passed. Isla grew into a thoughtful, outspoken girl who loved books and asked endless questions. Ryan became mischievous and fearless, climbing everything in sight. Our homes remained separate, but our lives intertwined. Holidays were shared, birthdays celebrated together, every important moment witnessed by all. Adam matured too. The reckless charm that once blinded me softened into quiet responsibility. He never once crossed boundaries. He never reopened old wounds. He respected the life I built, and in return, I respected the father and husband he became. Zane and I eventually had a child of our own, a daughter named Mira. Isla adored her. Ryan called her Baby Star. And when I watched the three children play together, I often thought about how fate had rearranged all of us, like pieces on a board, only to form a picture more complete than any of us could have planned. One evening, as the children played in the garden, Sarah sat beside me under the string lights. "Do you ever think about how this could have gone differently?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Yes,
It could have destroyed us completely. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. But it didn't. No, I said, because we chose something else. Choice. That was the true moral of our story. Not destiny, not luck, not coincidence. Choice. I chose to forgive instead of drown in bitterness. Sarah chose honesty over fear. Adam chose accountability over denial. Our mothers chose reconciliation over pride. And because of those choices, the children now played under lights and laughter, untouched by the shadows that once shaped us. Later that night, Isla came to me with a school assignment. Teacher said we must write about our family story. Can you help? I smiled. What do you want to write? She thought for a moment, then said, My family is special. We tell the truth. We don't hide, and we stay together. My throat tightened. Yes, I said softly. That's exactly right. When she ran off to write, I sat alone on the steps looking up at the stars. I thought of my younger self, the lonely child who never knew her father, the young woman betrayed by the man she loved, the adult who walked into a wedding expecting closure and found a sister instead. If someone had told me then how my life would unfold, I wouldn't have believed them. I would have said it was too strange, too cruel, too impossible to end well. But here I was, a sister, an aunt, a wife, a mother, a daughter who made peace with her past, not defined by betrayal, not trapped by secrets, but free. Because forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing not to let the past own your future. And family isn't always born from perfect love. Sometimes it's born from truth, spoken at the hardest moment. My story began with a heartbreak. I forgave my ex, and it revealed a shock, and found his bride was my half-sister. But it ended with something far greater. A life built from honesty, a family bound by choice, a heart finally at peace. And if anyone listening to my story is walking through betrayal right now, I want you to know this. The chapter that breaks you is not the chapter that ends you. Sometimes the greatest blessing arrives wearing the disguise of your deepest pain. And when you choose forgiveness, not for them, but for yourself, you just might discover a future more beautiful than anything you lost. My name is Nadia, and this was my story.